Lisa Calderon is the head of the Colorado Latino Forum, is that right?
That's right.
All right. You and I come from pretty different sides of the political spectrum.
Just a little bit.
I mean, I come from the rational side, you come from the irrational side, I come from a side that wants to have solutions. You guys want to cause trouble. I mean, I understand we're completely different.
Okay.
We seem to be coming together on an issue about electing law enforcement rather than having it appointed. You're leading a charge to have the Denver sheriff actually elected rather than appointed by the mayor.
That's right.
Why, I ask?
Well, so first of all, I think politics can make strange bedfellows. It's true. So we're on the same side of this issue. But a part of it is because I think we are both interested in increased accountability. We believe in direct democracy. The fact that the sheriff is only one of two in the state who was not elected makes Denver an outlier.
Let's clarify that for people who don't get it. So every county in Colorado, by the Constitution of Colorado, has a sheriff. And there's only two places, Broomfield and Denver, where they're appointed because they're cities and counties.
That's right.
Every other county has an elected sheriff. And my experience is they have been much more responsive to their constituents because they work for their constituents. They don't work for the city manager. They don't work for a mayor. There's just something different about sheriff's offices versus police departments.
That's right. And, you know, I think it's not just because they're a city and a county. I think when we look back at our history, we used to actually have an elected sheriff. So when Denver was established in 1858, we were a city and we were the county seat for Arapahoe County. And then later on, we became a county in 1902. And then 2 years later, then we added the sheriff to that because that was left out of that charter change. So we had an elected sheriff, but over the course, we also developed a strong mayoral system of government, and that created the manager of safety system. So then that became over the sheriff, the fire department, and the police department. So effectively, the manager of safety became the ex officio sheriff, and the actual sheriff became the undersheriff. So what we have today is a sheriff who is not really a sheriff, but is in name only. It is the manager of safety who runs the department.
And the sheriff, who's the sheriff in name only, runs the jail. So that's also kind of odd in that in most communities, the sheriff runs law enforcement outside of cities, but works with the cities. Anything that's unincorporated, it's their jurisdiction. Here in Denver, they run the jail, and the jail has some issues. They've got some bad PR. All right, but still, you want to change that. You're going to be looking at a citizens initiative to change that. Why? What's the big deal? Maybe it's bad policy, but why has this got you so excited that you want to take it to the ballot box?
Well, there are many reasons, and part of that is just the expense. The fact that we believe that the mayor's office is essentially using the sheriff's department like a blank check. So the worse things are, the more money they get. There isn't a checks and balances system like we have, for example, the auditor's office. So auditor's office operates independently from the mayor, conducts reports, says here's what needs to change. The sheriff is only responsible to a party of one. And so if so is
the chief of police.
And so is the chief of police. So as your article had pointed out a little while ago, there can be a case to be made for the chief of police to be elected. But that's not our issue. You can work on that.
Why isn't that your issue? Why the sheriff, not the chief of police?
Well, if it was up to me, I'd also have the city attorney elected because right now the city attorney acts like the mayor's own personal attorney. But we're just going at one charter change at a time, John, and that's going to be a heavy lift in and of itself. Part of it is that for the Colorado Latino Forum, we are concerned about justice reform. And justice reform from the perspective of cost, but not only just financial cost, but also the cost on inmates and the cost on staff. We know that, for example, the Public Safety Department since 2014 has spent almost $20 million in settlements. but things don't seem to be getting better.
Slow down on that one. That's worth revisiting for a second. $20 million on settlements for what? Bad wiring in their jails, or bad construction? No, these were mostly excessive force settlements.
That's right. That's right. And so when these settlements happen, the question becomes, well, how do you change things so that problem doesn't happen again? And what we see instead is settlements are paid out, but these problems tend to continue. Now, some might say, oh, it's because of the bad apples and we need to get those bad apples out. We would argue that it's the bad barrel. When you have people coming into a system with the best of intentions, they want to serve their community, but the system is set up such that you are now forced to work crazy overtime. You are exhausted.
Who is the you in this situation?
Deputy sheriffs and staff. So we have out of control staffing for overtime, for example, because Denver cannot retain its sheriff's deputies. So Denver is a place that people come in, they get trained, they get certified as a Denver sheriff deputy, and then Denver can't keep them because they are overworking their people.
And they go get a job with another sheriff's office.
Exactly, exactly.
All right. Can't these things be fixed without you going to all the trouble of electing a sheriff and changing the law? Why not just put the pressure on Mayor Hancock to hire the right type of person you want to run the operation the way you want it run?
Yeah.
Isn't that the way? And if you don't like it, then get rid of Hancock and hire a mayor that agrees with you.
Well, we're working on that, but we have been working on justice reform since 2011. So we have brought our recommendations to the previous sheriffs, to Mayor Hancock. You know, he promised with this last reform effort that the community members would have input on the sheriff he appoints. He reneged on that promise, and he just picked someone who had never been sheriff before, so Sheriff Patrick Furman.
You weren't asked for any input at all? There was no input? There was not even one of those little Potemkin meetings that they have, that government's so good at, we're going to have a roundtable discussion and have community input? There was none of that.
To rubber stamp what we've already decided,
right.
But at least it gives the appearance of input.
But trust me, even if they did that, it wouldn't matter. That doesn't matter. The point you made about, you called it direct democracy. I'm not necessarily a big fan of direct democracy. I'm a big fan of a check and balance system. That's why the auditor's office cannot be appointed. He would never be able to be an auditor if his job depended on the guy he's auditing.
Right.
And when it comes to law enforcement as well, that seems like a perfect separation of powers. I would go so far and just that chiefs of police, now that we have such issues with community versus police departments, Black Lives Matter issues, I have to wonder if this movement of electing sheriffs, which we do in every other county, if it ever started moving to chiefs of police, what that might do for relationships between the community and the police. Because when you pull somebody over, that's your boss. Right now, the chief of police, he only has one person he has to worry about pulling over. If he pulls over Mayor Hancock, then you're dealing with your boss.
That's right. The other piece about that is the people that are appointed by the figurehead sheriff are all also appointees, and so they are concerned about impressing the mayor. And so you're not always going to get the hard decisions that need to happen.
What kind of appointees? This is the part I'm not following. So I understand that the sheriff's appointed. Who around him is appointed?
Well, prior to this latest reform effort, there used to be chiefs who worked directly under the sheriff, and there still are on paper. But what the mayor has done now, and because it's also election season, has appointed his own people to effectively run the sheriff's department. So, for example, the sheriff's chief of staff actually was appointed to the mayor, by the mayor. So, how much change can you have happen if this person who is your chief of staff is also reporting directly to the mayor. Their PR person.
Let me stop there for a second.
Sure.
That's a little mind-bending. I understand, fine, the mayor appoints a sheriff. And it's like appointing a principal at your school. A superintendent does that. Fine. But then to decide who your second in command is puts up a conflict of interest right there, because that second of command doesn't really work for the sheriff. The second in command works for whoever appointed him. He knows that's the person you got to please. I don't know how you run an office if you don't have the authority to run the office.
Well, and that's what sheriff deputies are saying too. Who exactly is our boss? Who are we reporting to? So you basically have two systems of leadership in the sheriff's department. You have those who are by charter, those chiefs, et cetera, who work under the sheriff. And then you have this other shadow leadership team, the chief of staff, their new community engagement person, their PR person who has no background in law enforcement, for example. They have a couple of other people. These are all under mayoral appointees. So you've got two systems of leadership going on. Who is staff supposed to listen to? And so it's caused a lot of confusion. And then it trickles down, of course, to inmates. And so there's just additional layers of bureaucracy that don't need to be there.
The deputies support what you're doing. Does that surprise you? Do they officially support it?
They officially support it. So we're working with the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 27, I believe, and they're the sheriff's union. So they support this effort, and we're part of crafting the proposed ballot language. And they support it for all of the reasons that we've laid out. Is they're not anti-reform, but they want reform that makes sense. They're also concerned about safety issues.
Is there any city you think is doing it right? If you looked at a city around and said, if Denver did that, that's the way it needs to go. What city is that?
Well, I mean, we've got other places that are happening. I mean, so you take away Denver County and Broomfield County, every place else has an elected sheriff. And so it's not like just because you have an elected sheriff, you're going to get the greatest person in the world, but they're accountable.
People want to get involved and help you. Where do they go? What do they do?
electoursheriff.com.
electoursheriff.com.
That's right.
Lisa, thank you so much. Thank you. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Read me in the Denver Post. Tell a friend about the Independence Institute. We'll see you next week.